Hey there, true believers. You're tuned into Baxter Building Radio via the Negative Zone feed, and welcome to episode 42 of the Fantastic Four Fancast. My name is Nate Charles. I'm your host, and I am joined by my co-host, the Ben Grimm, to my much less intelligent Reed Richards, Mr. Shane Murray. Shane, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. The sun ended up winning most of the day today, so that was kind of nice. The rain it didn't come, and we never got all of that snow that they said that we might get.
We still have the weekend to come.
Well, it's supposed to rain. Today was like the chance of snow, apparently, but there's still it still says I'm threatening till like 11 with that, so we'll see what happens. That could be a fun wake up in the morning.
Yeah, get ready with your snow shovel and your brush.
80 degrees 2 days ago and snow tomorrow morning. Welcome to Pennsylvania, I guess.
Didn't used to be this way, man. But we'll leave that lie. What have you been up to since last we met?
Really not much. We didn't do anything last week. Last weekend was like a veg weekend. After going away that one weekend and doing the show the weekend after, I just stayed home. What about yourself?
Oh, well, any plans I had more or less had the kibosh put on them when, I started suffering automotive issues. And here, after 10 years, it looks like I'm going to have to get myself a new car. So, yeah, that pretty much kept me at home for most of the weekend. Uh, but, that's one of those things where it kept me at home and I was constantly having to look into other stuff because I can't go without a vehicle.
Yeah, it's fair. I don't have a good system to be without a vehicle, especially in this area.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's so spread out around here. Might be able to once it warms up a little bit. And thanks to daylight savings time having hit, ride my bike to work here in the near future if necessary. But, getting literally anywhere else is going to be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, all literal problem too. So sucks about the car.
However, at least it happened close to home and it didn't happen when I was too far away.
Yeah, there's that.
Still had to have the thing towed to the garage. That was a pretty penny. But we do what we got to do. You know who else was dealing with towing issues?
Yeah, I do. High Evolutionary was dealing with towing issues.
That is correct. And he is one of the subjects of the issue that we are covering today in Marvel 2 in 1, Volume 1, number 63, cover dated for May of 1980, released on February 5th of 1980, with a cover price of 40 cents. Shane, I, as always, hopped on to pricecharting.com to look up recorded maximum values for what copies of this book has sold for. So, are you ready to do our version of The Price is Right, where you attempt to guess those values without going over?
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get started with the direct market copy of this book. How much do you think a graded 9.8 copy of Marvel 2-in-1 Volume 1, number 63 has sold for?
Um, $50.
I might have to work about changing the rules on this because, like, while you are under, you are like far under $226.74.
200 what?
Yeah,
For this issue?
yep, that is how much a graded 9.8 copy of the direct market version of this book has gone for at maximum.
This issue. Okay,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think that's what it's worth. Again, I don't have an Overstreet guide in front of me, but that is the highest recorded value. How about an ungraded copy, Shane? Direct market.
$5.12.
Still under. 585. $5.85. I'll clarify.
Mm. Yeah.
We also have the newsstand copy to worry about. Now, I was not able to find a graded version of the newsstand copy to go from. But how much do you think an ungraded copy of the newsstand version is sold for?
$5.80.
$5.87.
Dang. I was close.
Yeah, only 2 cents higher than the ungraded direct market version.
That seems way more priced right for this issue than the 200 and what, $26?
$226.74. Yeah, that value seemed high to me as well. So our
Wow.
creative team for today's issue is writer Mark Gruenwald, penciler Jerry Bingham, inker Gene Day, colorist Roger Slifer, letterer Joe Rosen, editor Jim Salicrup, and editor-in-chief Jim Shooter. Would you like a synopsis for today's issue, Shane?
I would love one.
Alrighty, well, Marvel Unlimited was kind enough to provide us with a single line. The fate of Adam Warlock will be revealed at last.
I mean, it's straight into the point.
It is, though I do tend to like my synopsises with a little bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, that one's a pretty bad one.
Just a reminder to our listeners, or those who may have not joined us before this episode, that this issue is the conclusion of a three-part story. We did cover part one back in episode number 34 with Marvel 2-in-1, Volume 1, number 61, The Coming of Her. And part two, we hit on in episode 38, which was Marvel 2-in-1, Volume 1, number 62, The Taking of Counter Earth. So if you need to catch up, I would highly recommend going back and visiting those episodes. And we'll be here when you get back. For those of you who are caught up, we have the cover of this issue. You want to take us through it, Shane?
Yeah, now this is a very cool cover. Like this is a cover that you would buy if you're just walking by and saw it hanging out on the rack. You have a hand that's breaking through the ground, which is Adam Warlock's hand. You have the headstone behind him that says, "Here lies Adam Warlock," and you have Ben with just this look of awe on his face, seeing the hand rise out from the ground. Then you have Moondragon and Starhawk behind him, and very different interactions, the way their feelings of how they feel about Adam Warlock coming back from the dead, if for lack of a better word. And then you have all this beautiful outer space behind them with all these. It's so colorful. It's so many different lights, like so many. There's blues, purples, greens, pinks. You'll have those little balls circling the planet, and you have
I think those are
um
called moons.
I wasn't sure if those are the moons or if those were the things that are moving it across space because they're orange in the book.
That is
So,
fair. That is a fair point.
like the one is definitely a moon, but the other ones I think might have been the grid that they used to put the planet in stasis or whatever. And then you have a cool corner box with Adam Warlock and Ben Grimm in the corner.
And I think the thing that I like most about this cover is, of course, we have the title Marvel 2-in-1, which always immediately underneath it has the Thing, and it will list whoever he is teaming up with. And this one says Warlock with a question mark, because at this time in the comics, Adam Warlock was definitely dead. So how we get to a team up with Ben Grimm and Adam Warlock remains to be seen. And we do have a caption here as well with the title of our story, which is.
Suffer not a warlock to live.
So yeah, this is a really cool cover. Definitely brings a sense of wonder to whoever is going to be looking at this on the shelf. You are absolutely right. I'd be grabbing this off the shelf based on the cover alone. And we open to our first page and we're greeted with our header, which reads Stanley presents The Thing and Warlock. And who do we see on this first page, Shane?
All right. So on this first page, we have the High Evolutionary front and center, very angry, fists balled up, grimace on his face, very, very much just looking to put the hurt on somebody. Then you have the Thing, and again, a little surprise. You have Alicia touching Ben's face. Behind her, you have her staring directly at what everyone else is staring at. Moondragon behind her, and then on the, well, it's our left side of the page, but would be the right side behind High Evolutionary, would be Alita, the wife of Starhawk, who's currently in control of the Starhawk body.
And I think it's worth noting here that you say Alicia Masters is here, and she is in a spacesuit with like a really cool, like Silver Age-esque like bubble helmet.
Oh yeah.
Since she is the one non-powered person in this group traveling through space, our narration reads, Behold an angry god. Once he was human, a scientist probing the mysteries of life itself. Then he discovered the miraculous means to accelerate the evolution of all living things. His first act was to use the accelerator on himself, amplifying his intelligence 1,000-fold, enabling him to master all the arts and sciences known to man. Becoming more godly than human, he dubbed himself the High Evolutionary. He was not content. He wished to fashion a lasting testament to man's ability to master his universe. And so he created an entire world teeming with intelligent life, a world grown from the seeds of Earth itself. It resembled Earth in uncanny detail. He called his world Counter Earth. Know too that the High Evolutionary was a good and just god to his planet, not given to fits of wrath and vengeance, but while he slept, his world was stolen, and now he is an angry god indeed. And the High Evolutionary in his anger says, We have followed the trail of my planet across the Milky Way, and now that we have found it, I bid you pray for those who stole it. And again, we see the title of our story, Suffer Not, a Warlock to Live. Headline the following double page splash, where we see the High Evolutionary standing in front of a view screen where he points to Counter Earth, which looks to be surrounded by several crafts that resemble the Death Star, if I'm being quite honest, that look to have made a grid around the world in order to move it. To his right stand Ben with his arms folded, with Alicia next to him. And then to his left, her looks out upon Counter Earth, and behind her is Moondragon and Alita. And we do get our creative team listed one more time in the lower right-hand corner of page 3, and it says that they have joined forces to concoct the wildest cosmic adventure ever. Shane, I love pages like this, not just double page splashes, but ones where you have the story unfold and then you have on either side panels which have images of headshots of all the characters involved explaining what they're doing.
Yeah. It's nice to get everyone's reason for being there.
Yep. And our narration reads, In the planetoid ship's monitor room, the High Evolutionary and his 5 passengers behold a sight never before seen in the annals of human experience, the towing of an entire world across interstellar space. The 5? The Thing, Ben Grimm, a mortal man transformed into one of the mightiest heroes on Earth, who originally set forth on this amazing journey beyond the solar system in search of his beloved, Alicia Masters, a blind sculptress who agreed to aid the being known as her because of a mysterious empathy for the Golden Woman. Starhawk, Arcturian mutant from the 31st century, who shares corporeal existence with his wife, Alita. He came to the Thing's aid when Ben had nowhere else to turn. Her, the paragon of human genetic engineering, wielder of the power cosmic. She initiated this space odyssey in her search for her male prototype, Adam Warlock. Moondragon, priestess of Titan, mistress of mental force, who has guided her across the galaxy simply to share in a superior being's realization of destiny. And we also have a picture and caption for another, which reads, While somewhere on the surface of Counter-Earth lies the man called Adam Warlock, who died to save the universe, yet whose spirit exists within the soul gem, whereabouts unknown. Shane, have you ever seen the show Arrested Development?
Like bits and pieces, but I never like really watched the show Arrested Development.
So this is an aside here, but it has been bothering me for two issues. And now that we've hit the third, I'm just gotta say something. In the show Arrested Development, Michael Cera's character, George Michael, dates a girl named Anne Veal, who is the most bland girl maybe ever put into a television show. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's an interesting character, but to everybody else in the show, she is very bland. Michael Cera's father is played by Jason Bateman. And every time Michael Cera would bring up this girl Anne and how it's, the girl that he's dating, Jason Bateman's response would always just be, "Her?" And every time I have been reading character that is just named her, this pops into my head.
Fair enough. I mean, her
Because
name's
if I'm being
a
real, the character of her, who becomes Aisha, is not necessarily the most fleshed out of characters in this story.
no, no, no. She's a true anvil, if you want to go with your thing that you were going with earlier.
Anne Veal.
Yeah, sure. Anvil, who is an anvil. I get the pun. They were using that as a punchline. I get it.
I had not
That's
even
that.
thought about that. That's actually brilliant, Shane. Things that have flown over my head for nigh on 20 years.
But nah, yeah, that is a funny joke.
And the High Evolutionary says, I am impressed in spite of myself. Even I would be hard pressed to devise the technology to move a planetary mass without creating gravitational havoc. And Alicia looks to Ben and says, Ben, please, my love, tell me what's going on. Believe me, babe, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Each of the tow ships is creating some sort of stasis field, in effect putting the entire planet in suspended animation for the duration. And her says, if we were to venture down to the surface, I imagine we too would be paralyzed. Then, before we can recover, my beloved, we must first deal with the planet thieves. And Alita puts her head in her hands and suddenly looks very weak, enough so that Moondragon puts a hand on her shoulder and thinks, what's wrong with Alita? While Alita herself thinks, it's happening again. The High Evolutionary continues his conversation with her and Ben by saying, sensor readings indicate that each of the tow ships are inhabited. We may have to search all ships to discover who's in command. I don't suppose you tried radioing them. I think it's best we leave them as in the dark about our intentions as we are to theirs. Eh? And the High Evolutionary takes note of Alita and says, what is happening to her? She's transforming into her other self. And what do we see, Shane?
We see Alita transform back into Starhawk.
And Ben says, Starhawk, old pal. I've seen weird powers in my life, but changing into a woman has to be. I do not change into Alita Grimm. I relinquish my hold over our composite form to her. Whatever you say. High Evolutionary. I have determined that the ship over the North Gravitational Pole is the command ship. Accept the word of one who knows. Very well. It is that ship we shall direct our attention. I recommend that you let the five of us handle the expedition. We may need your strength in reserve. I can summon you telepathically if we require assist. And Moondragon chimes in. I can summon you telepathically if we require assistance. But Ben's having none of this. Wait a cotton picking minute here. Alicia ain't going nowhere dangerous. Ben, I'll be all right. Nothing doing. I promised I wouldn't let you out of my sight till we got back safe to Earth, and I meant it. That, of course, is your prerogative, friend Grimm. I trust that the others comprise all the champion's counter-Earth requires. Soon, in the teleportation chamber, what do we see, Shane?
So in the teleportation chamber, we see Alicia still holding on to Ben as Ben is about to pull the lever down to teleport the, I guess you would call them the away team, if you will, using a Star Trek reference that's going off to put a stop to one of these stasis vehicles, stasis moons, I guess.
And one thing I do really admire about this story and Jerry Bingham's art within is that Alicia, more or less, does always seem to have a hand on somebody, which I think is very important because at times it's easy to forget that Alicia is blind without some of these visual cues.
Oh yeah, I caught on to that very early. Like I pulled it up and like I said in the first panel, they definitely make sure that you know that Alicia is, I wouldn't want to say out of her element, but kind of out of her element in this situation.
They make sure the reader knows that, but it's amazing because a lot of the characters in the story outside of Ben seem to forget that. And as Ben manipulates the teleporter controls, he thinks, I feel kind of like I'm faking out on him. But hey, I didn't ask to go on this trip. And then he asks, I just pulled down this lever and they do a fade out, right, Evie? Uh, Good luck, guys, Ben says as Starhawk, her, and Moondragon flash out of the room. An instant of icy infinity engulfs the trio, and they rematerialize somewhere within the enemy's command craft. And not only are they within the command craft, but they are flanked by at least two of these planet thieves. One of which lets out an exclamation, Shane. What does he say?
Um, Squiggly C, squiggly almost five, backwards C, up down, squiggly D, backwards three.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And her, and her says, our arrival has not gone unnoticed. Look, I do not recognize their race. Apparently, they do not belong to the Federation in my time era. I'll scan their minds, see what I can learn about them. And we see that there are actually three of these alien beings. Can you describe them, Shane?
Yeah, they are extremely tall. Like the heroes, her, Starhawk and Moondragon, are dwarfed by these aliens in their they also have the 1950s space bubble helmet like Alicia's been rocking. And they have yellow spacesuits with these chrome, I don't, I'm assuming they're just part of their uniform, but it's like a chrome vest that runs up to their helmet. They have green gloves and a green belt with a green little pea shooter on the side. And they are also green, and they have like a vent that I'm assuming lets their voice be heard when they're trying to communicate between each other. And they have all these ridges around their eyes and up through the middle of their head. Oh yeah, and a little bit on their lips.
And as her flies towards the first one of these aliens that is on the far left of the panel, he has a lot to say, Shane.
Oh yeah. So E, L with two lines through it sideways. Uh I'm not sideways H that's like with circles, and backwards two with the dot.
What do you think those letters sound like together?
Oh, something like holy smokes.
It will go with that. And as her approaches in a rather speedy fashion, she says, hurry, we must subdue them before they can summon aid. Nothing must endanger my quest. And Moondragon, rushing this trio of aliens from below, thinks, their thoughts are so alien, my telepathy is virtually useless. Once again, my power looks second rate next to hers. Moondragon and her jealousy, man.
Yeah, she has a lot of jealousy issues in these three books.
And her hits this alien that she charged at with an energy blast and says, a simple biostellar burst will render this creature insensate. While another of the aliens takes aim at Starhawk, who begins to dodge his pistol blasts and thinks, the Golden One is ever eager to attack, letting nothing stand in her way. I prefer to determine the extent of my foe's hostility before resorting to violence. And Starhawk lets loose with an energy blast of his own directly into his attacker's chest. Meanwhile, on the ground, Moondragon thinks, at least my psionic blasts work on any living mind, no matter how alien. And she lets loose with one of said psionic blasts on the third alien. Moments later, we see the trio of Starhawk, her, and Moondragon running away from the fallen forms of their assailants, as Starhawk says. Come, we must find the ship's bridge. Then lead on. My power has yet to be pushed to its limits. Elsewhere aboard the ship, what scene do we find, Shane?
So we see in like the command center of the ship two of the aliens that we were talking about earlier discussing the intruders on their ship. And this time it is so lovingly translated to us in English.
Yeah, so in their foreign language that we can read at this point, the one subordinate addresses what I assume is the captain and says, Sir, 3 aliens have beamed aboard, most likely from the pursuing planetoid ship. They are making their way towards us, and none of our weapons can deter them. While the captain stands up and leans against the control console and says, Hey, do I tell you my problems, huh? Anyway, I'm preparing a surprise for them that should take care of everything. Meanwhile, we go back to the high evolutionary ship, where while our super scientist dotes over a console, Ben comforts Alicia and says, I sure wish I knew how they was doing. Don't worry, Ben. None of them are lacking for power. The reason I didn't go with them is so I could be with you, to protect you. I know, and I'm grateful. And Ben looks back over his shoulder at the high evolutionary and says, Hey, Evie, can't you crank up the scope on this screen so we can get a look inside at what's going on? There are limits to even a man god's capabilities, Grim. And Ben thinks, if they blow this on account of my copping out, I'm gonna feel like a Class A heel. At that moment, however, the Thing's fears are unfounded, for his strange allies remain on the offensive. And our cosmic trio comes across another group of 4 of these aliens, and Moondragon, on foot, thinks to herself, Whew, I'm having a difficult time keeping up with these two. While her asks to Starhawk, Is this the control room? Not yet. And one of the aliens draws a blaster and yells, Tiny aliens! Disrupt them! Unfortunately, Counter Earth's rescuers have their own ideas about disruption. As Starhawk unleashes a cosmic blast, Her causes a biostellar eruption, and Moondragon brings up the rear with her martial arts, enhanced by levitation. Again, aboard the High Evolutionary ship, Alicia asked the High Evolutionary, As a sculptor, I understand the creative impulse, but whatever prompted you to sculpt an entire world? Every being must strive in his own way to challenge the heavens. Our achievements are to the greater glory of creation itself. But suddenly, the High Evolutionary Ben and Alicia find themselves engulfed in a burst of energy. I felt I. What is happening? That sensation is like, oh no, Alicia baby, hold on! But when between space there is nothing to hold on to. Split seconds later, what happened, Shane?
Are three that were on the High Evolutionary's moon ship appear before one of the aliens that we have seen the other three fighting so far.
And the alien says, Hiya, folks. Welcome aboard Rig Ship 1, command vessel of the prime movers of Tarkus. My name's Sphinxor. And Ben thinks, oh, great. Another Galactus-sized alien to clobber. But what happens immediately upon Sphinxor's introduction?
Oh, high evolutionary grows to be at least the same height as him to feel like he's letting him know that he's just as capable as the alien. It seems like a way of him showing off that he's not threatened by the alien being so much taller than him.
Yeah, he's definitely taking control of the situation, and he extends his hand and says, "Greetings. I am the High Evolutionary, creator of the planet Counter Earth. Nice to meet you." Oh, Evie blew up to 20 feet tall just like that. Guess he's not going to be outclassed. Fortunately, you speak English. That will simplify matters. And Sphinxer takes a seat at his control console and says, "I spent some time in your system monitoring your television transmissions. Learned all about Earth's culture from watching sitcoms. If that don't beat all. An alien who talks like a refugee from Gilligan's Island. Now, I suppose you're wondering why I sent for you. I think there's been a big misunderstanding. But before Sphinxer can elaborate, what happened, Shane?"
So before he can elaborate, the other three break into the control chamber and shock the other aliens that are in the room.
And one of his subordinates screams, "Captain, the other aliens!" But the High Evolutionary steps in and shouts, "Fear not, for they will not harm you. Halt! The time for battle has passed. For now." Stunned to see before them their friends they left behind, the three cosmic heroes stop in mid-flight. This is no deceptive tactic. The High Evolutionary truly stands before us. And the High Evolutionary turns his attention back to Sphinxer and says, "You have teleported me here to talk, to discuss why my planet has been stolen. I await your answer. My ring shippers and I were contracted to move your planet by a race of beings called the Beyonders." Now, this is actually pretty notable, Shane, because this is the first mention of the Beyonders in Marvel continuity, as far as I can tell. And they play massive roles going forward in Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2 and the 2015 Secret Wars. So I'm not sure if Mark Gruenwald knew what he was setting up here, but he definitely ended up laying the first brick in what became a tapestry of groundwork and eventually brought us to Marvel's very first line-wide crossover.
Probably didn't know what he was doing, but it ended up working out for him.
And as editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter was taking notes.
I could believe that.
And Sphinxer continues. "They became aware of your experimental world while you were collecting the extra-dimensional mass to build it. They dispatched me to your system to observe your progress and make preparations for the planet moving. By half phasing into your space, I watched you and your boy Warlock without you knowing it. This Warlock fellow looked to be a problem, someone we'd never be able to make a deal with. We'd have to take care of him another way." And then we see in the next panel Warlock having been crucified. That amazes me that there's not actually an editorial note
Yeah,
regarding this.
when did that happen?
That occurred in Incredible Hulk, Volume 1, number 177.
Okay, okay.
And
Because like,
Sphinxer himself has actually been observing Warlock for quite some time, way back in February of 1975, Strange Tales, Volume 1, number 178. So there's definitely a lot of history that is going on within these panels that's just not noted.
maybe they thought the readers were all well versed in this.
Doesn't seem to stop them before, though.
No, what Warlock was dead for what, 3 years at this point?
Something along those lines.
77, 78, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sphinxer continues. Following his crucifixion, I fooled with his soul gem, unleashing the baubles of empiric appetites. The side effect you probably didn't know about when you gave it to him. The groundwork laid, I hightailed it back to my system to get the prime movers. When the ring ships arrived, we found that Warlock was back in the area. To prevent him from messing us up, we manipulated his soul gem to make him imagine that he'd accidentally grown as large as the whole solar system. And when did that occur, Shane?
That one we do get a note for, and that one is from Warlock number 14.
The universe was no longer big enough for the two of us. We'd hoped he'd up and leave again. Unfortunately, the illusion was bust and he came to his senses before we could finish our business. So we tried another more powerful illusion on him, making him believe that Counter Earth was destroyed. We struck out again. Instead, he tried to off you thinking you were the culprit. And when did that occur, Shane?
It was revealed last issue.
And again, we covered that in episode 38. And we see after his utter annihilation of the evolutionary, Warlock takes off into space again. As Sphinxor's narration continues, figuring that he snuffed you, we simply set up our stasis rings and took off with Counter Earth in tow. Now that it's clear you're still alive, we kindly refer you to the Beyonders for any questions pertaining to what they intend to do with your world, okay? Then you do not even know why they want my world? That's not my job, man. And actually, we didn't have much of a choice in the matter. As powerful as you might be, I'd rather take on 100 of you than one of the Beyonders. Okay, story time's over. Now can we clobber these stilt-leggers, take your planet, and go home? Not so fast, friend Grim. I have become most intrigued by these beings who have employed Sphinxer. From what we have been told, the Beyonders may be more powerful than any beings yet encountered by man. Greater than Galactus, the Watcher, Thanos, any of them. As a scientist, I am curious. And more, Counter Earth was in grave danger even before it was stolen. You see, despite it being the same size as the true Earth, it is only about 1/100th Earth's mass. I simply could not find that much planetary debris even in adjacent realities to make up Earth's mass. As a consequence, Counter Earth's core is very unstable. So unstable that it is only a matter of time before the planet disintegrates from internal pressures. Before Warlock returned, I spent all my time trying to rectify my original oversight, but to no avail. Perhaps these Beyonders will be able to save my world. But Ben's not really having this, as he says. What? You mean to tell us we came all the way across the galaxy to rescue a planet that was doomed anyway? And now you just want to let him get away with it? As its creator, that is my right. Sphinxer, you have my permission to continue your delivery of Counter Earth on two conditions. One, that I am allowed to accompany you and meet the Beyonders. And two, that you permit my companions to conduct some business on Counter Earth's surface immediately. That sounds reasonable, old chap, except for one problem. In order to let anyone on the planet's surface, we'd have to shut off a portion of the stasis field, and that would make us lose considerable time and energy. The Beyonders have us on a very strict timetable, and I'm afraid we're already straining the limit. In other words, Bunky, we can't grant your second request. What do you mean you can't? And Ben marches his way right up onto Sphinxer's lap and rears back with his left fist and says, Listen, Bug Eyes, I've had just about all the runarounds I can stand. Either you shut off your doohickey and you send us down, or me and my pals are gonna trash your entire ship. Beginning with you, understand? And Ben clobbers Sphinxer right in the face, sending him flying back out of his chair.
Kazak.
And Alicia grabs Ben's arm and says, Ben, was that necessary? At this point, baby, anything that gets me and you back to Earth is worth it. And Sphinxer is rubbing the top of his head as he pulls himself off the ground and says, Okay, okay, you made your point. Who would have guessed the moving business could be so dangerous? Soon, in the teleporter room, Moondragon provides the coordinates of their destination. The stasis field is shut down in the designated area, and the quintet prepares to beam down. And the High Evolutionary says to his companions, Remember, you have but 10 minutes to complete your task before retrieval. Yeah, yeah, as long as I don't turn into a pumpkin. Farewell, and may the gods be with you. My quest is almost over. Let us not waste another moment. And as the teleportation field once again envelops this quintet of heroes, Ben thinks to himself, just gives me the willies, being taken apart atom by atom and being put back together somewhere else. And for the third time in the past few hours, organic mass is converted into energy and beamed through space. And Sphinxor turns to the High Evolutionary and asks, if you don't mind me asking, what's this quest your friends were talking about? The one called Her is seeking many things, much more than merely locating the only other member of her race could ever provide. Yet hers is not the first such quest, and I truly doubt if it will be the last. The stillness of Counter-Earth overwhelms the five Voyagers as they materialize within the narrow cone of non-stasis. There is no wind, no sound, no light except for the canopy of stars. And Starhawk uses his own energy manipulation powers to provide almost like a torch out of his hand as he holds it over his head and says, we are the only beings capable of movement on the entire world. And Moondragon begins to direct the group downhill and says, come, the grave site is this way. Sheesh, this whole planet is like a cemetery. Solemnly, all follow Moondragon to a nearby hilltop, where three graves await. And in the center of these three graves is a headstone that reads, here lies Adam Warlock, Godslayer, savior of two worlds and tormented soul. May he now be at peace. And though I'm sure these dates are no longer accurate, it states his lifespan was from when, Shane?
1967 to 1977.
They halt, save for the one called Her. The task of raising Adam Warlock from the dead can only be done by her alone. Slowly raising her arms, she emits twin beams of ethereal energy which dance before the center gravestone like fairy fire. Into the ground before her, she pours her power, her love, her very life force. As the earth trembles, so do the awestruck witnesses of this miracle. Finally, the earth explodes, and a red and gold splashed figure bursts forth. Adam Warlock has risen. And Her lets out the exclamation of, my love. And she rushes forward to embrace the figure of Adam Warlock. Adam, I am your perfect mate. I have brought you back from death by the power of my love. She presses close, letting the steady beat of his heart echo her own. But then she draws back with a shudder of realization. I, I failed. I have brought back his body to life, but his soul has eluded me. Without the soul, the body is a hollow shell. Return to your dank grave, O love that can never be mine. I am undone. And using her biostellar powers, Her lowers Adam Warlock back into his grave. But why has Warlock's soul eluded her, Shane?
So Warlock's soul exists in the soul gem he once wore, now in the possession of the extraterrestrial gardener.
Yeah, normally I just pay my gardener in cash. I don't normally keep soul gems on hand, but
Oh, you don't let yours walk you to Mount Doom, you mean?
yeah, yeah, never. In moments all as is before, the gravesite lay tranquil and undisturbed, in mocking contrast to a woman's heart. And in an almost what I'm sure is foreign concept to her, tears begin to well up in her eyes and stream down her face as Ben approaches her from behind and places a comforting hand on her shoulder. Look, I'm sorry. We all are. Maybe, maybe you'll find someone else. She turns then, briefly considering the one who has offered his compassion. Compassion from a being she gave nothing but contempt. She does not know how to respond. The one being she believed capable of teaching her love and compassion is forever beyond her grasp. She feels grief, but she does not know how to share it. Thus, without a word, she takes to the sky, fleeing from feelings she can't express. And as the other four watch her vanish into the cosmos in a flash, Ben says, "How do you like that? After all we done for her, she runs off without so much as a thank you. She is a goddess. Do you expect a goddess to share her sorrow with mere mortals?" remarks Moondragon, but she then proceeds to think, "It seems I must redefine godhood for myself. I am certainly not in the class of her yet. I must follow her, have her tutor me." And Starhawk interjects, "While her godhood is debatable, she is beyond a doubt an incredibly powerful being, unique in the universe. I wish her peace." And Ben turns back to Alicia and places a hand on her shoulder and says, "Well, baby, it's over. We can go home now." And I think we've learned something, Ben. Perhaps there is no such thing as the perfect love her sought. Perhaps even persons as different as you and me have a better chance at happiness than people made for one another. I hope that her discovers that too, or I fear her destiny may be a lonely one. The end. All right, Shane. We have reached the conclusion of our trilogy of stories from Marvel 2-in-1, Volume 1, number 61 through 63. Your thoughts?
So I have some notes on this. I thought that this specific story was not as good as the first two. I feel like it let me down. A weak finish to what should have been a very compelling story. I think it's mostly for me brought on by the fact that like her story arc is kind of resolved with her like just piecing out after not being able to get Warlock's soul there. But like we don't meet the Beyonders. We don't really see what happens, like how they get home. There's so much left unanswered with the rest of the story. It ends with a really cool panel, and I just feel like this book misses the mark because there was like two of the members of the five don't even really need to be in the story for this book. They were so unimportant to the story. They were just trying to force them into it. It left me wanting a little bit more, I'm not gonna lie. It felt lacking to me. What about yourself?
Well, I mean, I agree with you on some parts. I disagree with you on others. You brought up the characters that you didn't necessarily feel were necessary to the story. At this point, the Beyonders are just a plot device, right? Like they're just
Uh,
the unseen benefactors of Sphinxor and the prime movers of Tarkus.
those weren't the ones I was talking about.
Okay. But you still said that, we didn't need them.
I didn't say we didn't need the Beyonders. I said there was two characters that we didn't need in this story. You assumed that it was the Beyonders. There's
You were
two
talking
characters of the main five that started this that really are not necessary to this final arc at all.
Starhawk and Moondragon.
Yeah.
So I do have a response for that as well, which is that I think this is where we somewhat fall into the trap of what Marvel 2-in-1 is, which is a book that teams the Thing up with a different character each and every issue. So when you do longer stories like this, eventually you might run into the part where you've brought a character in to satisfy that theme, and eventually that character has served its purpose, but you don't have a way to write them out of the story. So you had the Thing in Starhawk leading off the first issue, and then the Thing in Moondragon in the second. And then they brought it as the Thing in Warlock in this issue, which I understand why they marked it as Warlock because that was a character that they had published in its own book. He was the big name within the story. Because just even though I think considering the whole Arrested Development gag, it would be hilarious if, 20 years before that show was on the air, there was literally a comic that was like Marvel 2-in-1 featuring the Thing and her. Like, I think that would be amazing. But that wasn't going to sell books. This was more or less, despite the fact that she was introduced as Paragon initially, this is more or less the debut appearance of her in this form in this storyline. So I can see why they didn't use her as a title character. But I think that's where the collection of what you deemed as unnecessary characters was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the B plot of this book just goes sideways so hardcore. After you get the Warlock appearance and then disappearance again, it's like over.
In an ideal world, Shane, how would you have written Starhawk and Moondragon out of the story?
Out of this specific story, I don't know.
And neither did Mark Gruenwald. Honestly,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am definitely not like the super writer extraordinaire. Obviously, when I do D&D stuff, you know that I usually do one shots because I'm not like I would be the king of writing one shot comics. Like putting together three things would be hard for me. But I just feel like, and I don't mean like I we know how they're gonna get home. They're obviously gonna get home. I just feel like ending where they ended so abruptly without even going back to the high evolutionary and seeing where, like he said he was going with the aliens, but did they all travel with the high evolutionary out to the Beyonders? Or did he do what you said, teleport him? That's all. Like, if it was just a teleportation panel to end this book, that would have been fine. Like one more page that solved the four things that I said I had problems with. It's only 17 pages. What's one more page?
well, I mean, you got to take into account the publishing costs of additional pages, but also then we wouldn't get the ending on that poignant panel that you talked about, where it is Alicia, though she is blind, it appears like she's staring out into the cosmos, Ben behind her, comforting hand on her shoulder, and she has that very poignant line about love and how it's not necessarily that people are made for each other, but that opposites attract. So I don't know. I feel like an additional page would have taken away from that theme.
Well, they could have moved that panel over a page when they were hitting the throttle for the teleporter. The panel before full teleport, this panel would just have the little bit of yellow behind them as they're finishing their sentence as they get teleported back to Earth.
Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. They're not getting teleported back to Earth. What's going to happen is they're going to get put back over on the evolutionary ship. That's where Ben and Starhawk's ride is. That's where Sensia is, Moondragon's ship, because she's
Yeah.
obviously pursuing her out there because she's lusting for power. Yeah. I think it's implied what happens to them at the end. I don't think it's necessarily something we had to see, but I guess we agree to disagree on this one.
And then Moondragon flew during like the first two books. Why is she running in this one?
I don't know. I don't know, Shane. I'm suspecting there's a grim grumbling in here for you.
No, it's not even that, but it's kind of touched on already on this. But yeah, you want to get into our four things?
Our Fantastic Four of the week.
Our Fantastic Four of the week.
All right, cool. Yeah, we can do that. You do actually go first this week. So,
Cool.
Shane, you want to lead us off with your fantastic frame.
Well, it's the one that we already talked about like four times, so it's page 16, panel four, the end
You're
of the
going
book.
with you're okay, you're going with the last panel of the book.
Yep, last panel of the book. There was some that I flipped back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but I screenshotted this and sent it to my wife. This was the panel that just stuck with me.
It's a great panel, and like I said, I think Jerry Bingham thralls Alicia Masters wonderfully. So, and I mean, you get the cool aesthetic with the spacesuit and Ben looking over her shoulder as the protector made of granite, more or less.
Well, also, it's just really cool. If you look, you can see him through the spacesuit, the
Yeah.
space helmet. Yeah, I love that. Little details like that. What was yours, bud?
So mine is actually back on page 12 in panel 3, where Ben decks Sphinxor. I mean, let's be real, man. It is always a good time to see Ben take out someone who is bigger than him. And if nothing else, Sphinxer fits that definition. I don't know. I do struggle slightly looking at the panel before with understanding how Ben goes from standing in his lap to standing on the ground as he falls back. But, I'm not talking about the panel before. I'm talking about the panel afterwards, where you're literally seeing the impact and this giant form flying back from the thing. And yeah, just a fun panel.
It is, it is. It was one of the other panels I was looking at. I just went with the emotional connection on the last one.
But, for all the greatness, every once in a while you do have the thing that you got to complain about. So take you to my grim grumbling, which this time around I settled on page three, panel three, purely for Ben's dialogue. And this is definitely going to fall into the this aged poorly category. But when he says to Starhawk, I've seen weird powers in my life, but changing into a woman has to be. And then he gets cut off, which, you know what? Good for Starhawk for shutting that right down.
Okay,
You
that's
know,
that one. I mean, I can get it, I guess. That one, I just read it and just glazed over it, I guess.
yeah, I
But I
don't know.
do.
In the world we live in now, where we have, as a culture, become more accepting of transitioning and whatnot, it just doesn't play well. So that was why it came to be my choice for my grim grumbling at the very least. What was yours, man?
So I've already said my piece on Starhawk and Moondragon, not really fitting the bill for this specific book. But the one that my actual Grim Grumbling ended up being, it is going back to page 12, and it's going to be panel 4. And it is the bottom word bubble there from, oh, I don't
Sphinxer?
know, Sphinxer, yeah. When he's like, okay, okay, who made you made your point? Who would have guessed that moving business could have been so dangerous? The moving business? My
Yeah.
guy, that's grand theft. That is not moving.
I
That,
found it to be playful humor.
that is grand theft in the highest degree. I don't even know what you call it. Grand Theft Planet?
Yeah,
Grand
apparently.
Theft Grand Theft Planet 1, I guess. So that that was like he when he was like doubled like down on the moving thing, I was like, my guy, you stole a planet. Stolen planet.
I think it's a great joke, but yeah. Oh, how about your cosmic cliffhanger, Shane? Where did you
Um,
land on that this week?
I landed on it on page 15, panel 7, when Ben's trying to calm her down from her sorrows a little bit, trying to say maybe things will get better, and you don't know what's going to go on from there because we have seen her lose her absolute mind a couple times in the previous 2 issues. Now she has fixed most of the stuff after she went and lost herself, but just taking off like when you flip the page and she just takes off. I was not expecting that. I was expecting more utter destruction, to be honest.
Okay, I can see that question being in your mind and that ratcheting up the suspense a bit.
What was yours?
So we flip back a page to page 14, panel 4. Adam Warlock has risen. You know, where are we with this? How is he going to take his resurrection? How is he going to respond to her? Is he going to return her feelings? Is he the same man he was prior to death? Turns out none of that matters, but does raise a lot of questions when you have someone come back from the dead. Instead, he's just a shell.
Yep. I did look at that one also, but I felt like you kind of knew that's the direction they were going because of the fact that he's part of the Soul Gem and there's no Soul Gem with them. I kind of expected the next page, but I do understand why you would look at it and be like shocked, especially when the cover says Warlock with a question mark.
Yeah, well, and honestly, Shane, when you think about it, did they know all of that back in 1977, or is this new information? I will be honest, I haven't read through Warlock's original series too much up before this point or anything, so I'm not entirely certain if the whole soul gem thing and his consciousness residing into it and how that all worked was common knowledge. Here in the year of our Lord 2026, I mean, we know a lot more about Adam Warlock, and obviously he got better at some point, but yeah, I'm not sure how common the knowledge of this was. Well, I say 1977. This book was published in 1980, but still, I'm not entirely certain how prevalent that knowledge was at this time.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a fair point. I guess reading it, I sometimes I forget that we have more knowledge than when the books come out.
Yeah, we're almost a half century of knowledge ahead of where this was at the time,
That sounds terrible.
doesn't it though?
Let's not think about misery. All right. Anyway, that means you're first for most fantastic player.
All right, MFP. So for this issue alone, I had to go with Ben, purely for knocking Sphinxor on his keister.
Fair point. I will tell you a little secret that Ben's also mine.
Okay. Well, is it, the fact that he goes and he puts Sphinxer square on his butt allows her to finish the business that she needed to conclude that was at the heart of the whole story. Had Ben not done that, these three issues would have all been for nothing. So, yeah, Ben gets my vote for MFP. Why does he get your vote?
For kind of being the moral compass of trying to guide these guys along. And I don't know if I want to. I've wrote the road moral compass, but that's just, I think, just the way it worked in my head. I mean that by like, he's the one that wants to help her. He just doesn't know how to help her. He's the one that is the first one to console her when something goes awry.
He is also,
He,
however, the one who does not go on to the Prime Mover's command ship because his priority is making sure Alicia is safe. So he hangs back, and he does feel bad about hanging back. Let's remember that.
yeah, I think that was also part of the reason I have written down for the moral compass was because he does ask for the high evolutionary to have like a telescope that could see through there so that he could watch them because he's so concerned about them going forward. He just seems like the perfect fit. And again, yeah, knocking out Sphinxer and trying to help her deal with her emotions while again protecting the love of his life.
So yeah, I know you said that you thought it was a little bit of a weak ending, but overall, how did you feel about the story as a whole?
So I have in my notes that like this book, I would give it like a 2 out of 4, and like the whole series together, maybe a 2.5 out of 4. I've been grading on a 4 scale. I enjoy the 3-part story. I don't think it's like necessarily groundbreaking story. I don't think it's a mandatory read. But if you're looking for a fun 3-part story, that's going to take you 30 minutes to read, probably. Even I read it pretty quick. You got beautiful artwork, a lot of cool space stuff, aliens out the wazoo. Just as I like always like to say, as you make fun of me for, a fun. This is a fun longer romp.
But you wouldn't necessarily refer to it as they do on page two as the wildest cosmic adventure ever.
No, absolutely not. Maybe at the time it was. I don't even think this is quite as wild as the Planet X ridiculousness that happened.
Yeah, I don't know. I have complicated feelings about the Planet X storyline from Fantastic Four, Volume 1, Number 7, which we covered all the way back in episode 22. But I don't know. I thought this was a fun story for what it was. I thought it had a poignant message to it. I thought it wrapped up nicely. The problems you had with it, I kind of just looked at it as the consequences of what the theme of Marvel 2-in-1 was. Uh, Overall, I enjoyed myself. I would like to throw out a thank you to listener Jim Murray for showing interest in Marvel 2-in-1 number 62 via our On This Day in FF History post in our Facebook group. Jim himself is an author of novels and comics. You can actually find him online at jemurr.wordpress.com. That is the home of his blog for Hard Coal Studios. Also on social media, you can find those links on there as well. Yeah, keep up with Jim's work. He does wonderful, wonderful writings. And we highly appreciate his suggestion for this storyline. And if you would like to read this all for yourself, you can find these stories in the Essential Marvel 2-in-1 Volume 3. That is black and white on newsprint paper and was released back in July of 2009. It is also in the Guardians of the Galaxy Tomorrow's Avengers Volume 2 trade paperback from May of 2013 and the Guardians of the Galaxy's Tomorrow's Heroes Omnibus Volume 1 from January 2019. Also, you can find it in Marvel Masterworks Marvel 2-in-1 Volume 6 from February of 2022, Adam Warlock Omnibus Volume 1 from April of 2023, Guardians of the Galaxy Epic Collection Volume 2 Quest for the Shield from February of 2025, and upcoming in August of this year, 2026, as of this recording, we have Marvel 2-in-1 Epic Collection Volume 4 titled Project Pegasus. You can also find it on Marvel Unlimited or in the back issue bins of your local comic book store. Well, Shane, next week it's the first week of the month, and you know what that means.
Jack and Stan.
Jack and Stan indeed, as we head over to Fantastic Four, Volume 1, Number 11. As always, true believers, your feedback is important to us. We would highly appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, or you could leave a comment or a review on Spotify. We highly recommend subscribing to us on your preferred listening platform so we show up in your feed each and every week. We are on Facebook, as we previously mentioned, at the Fantastic Four Fancast, where we encourage you to engage in FF-related discussions and share Fantastic Four content. We only ask that you adhere to our group rules. That is also a great place to drop Fantastic Four material that you're interested in that we can cover on the show. You can follow us over on Instagram at Fan4Fancast. That is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST. And finally, you can contact us by email with feedback or suggestions at fan4fancast@gmail.com. Again, that is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST@gmail.com. Shane, what are your final thoughts for this week?
As always, I'm gonna say go read it and judge for yourself. The art's super beautiful in all three books. Even if I belittle the story a little bit, you're gonna at least enjoy looking at the pictures.
Yeah, it's great art. Jerry Bingham, Gene Day, they leave nothing on the table. And I respect Shane's opinion about the story, even though I think it's wrong. I think this story, while not necessarily groundbreaking, has a great message at its heart. That being said, even though we agree to disagree, I look forward to hanging with you again for a couple hours next week, my friend.
Oh yeah, this is always fun.
For Shane Murray, I'm Nate Charles. We hope you too will join us again next week. And until then, stay fantastic.